Hey, if you've ever wanted to be able to capture fireworks, then let's go through some ways that you can do that with your camera. The only thing that really matters is that you had fun taking photos and you enjoyed the show. So today we're going to get into how to capture fireworks with your camera, what settings to use. There's a lot of different methods that you can use, but it is really similar to just night photography. And night photography can be kind of a challenging genre or type of photography. Then add the fireworks, add that pyrotechnic detail to your photography. Now you have a little more complexity to your photography. So don't worry, just be flexible, have fun, and most importantly, enjoy the fireworks. You're going to need a camera, whether it's an SLR, DSLR, mirrorless camera, or even point and shoot cameras. They have a mode for fireworks on them that does a pretty good job of capturing fireworks. So don't be discouraged if you don't have the latest and greatest camera. Your camera will work. Now a lot of these things are going to apply to most cameras, so you can use them for your specific camera. Some will be specific to these that have interchangeable lenses and full manual controls. All right, what else are you going to need? You will also want to bring a tripod with you so you can eliminate as much camera shake as possible to hold your camera steady. And another way to hold your camera steady is to use a remote shutter button or an external app that connects to your camera so you can remotely control the shutter. Just any way that you can set your camera up and it will be steady. Maybe turn on touch shutter so you don't bump the camera too much by pressing that shutter button. So this will help combat any shakes in the camera. Sturdy tripod, touch shutter or remote shutter. And also don't forget to bring some memory cards. Just in case, you might bring 2 of them just so you have a backup. If your card fills up, you can have that backup, throw it in and you're ready to go again. While you're out enjoying the show, you may want to bring a camp chair, folding chair, or some sort of way that you can sit down and enjoy the show while you're taking photos. Now, if you're not familiar with your camera and know where all the buttons, functions, and settings are, you may need to use a phone light or a flashlight so you can see what settings you're changing. Or if you have your back screen, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, you have all of that there. But if your camera doesn't have that, then you may need a light to show up the settings that you're changing. Now before the show, you may want to walk around and see where the best angle for this light show is going to be at once it gets dark, so you have a good spot to shoot the fireworks from. Sometimes you can sit up with the crowd, or you may want to sit a little bit further away from the crowd so you can get that whole display in your shot. So just kind of see where everything's going to be taking place. Just make sure you have a good angle or good composition, perspective for the whole show. You do want to make sure that your horizon line is level before it gets too dark, so make sure your camera is set up and you're ready to go before you start shooting. When you're going around picking a spot to shoot from to get the whole scene in, you need to take in consideration how far away you're going to be. So whether you can shoot on a prime lens, or if you want to use a zoom lens so you can pull in, pull out if you need to get more of that scene in focus, you can just quickly do that. Now let's talk about lenses. 70 to 200, or I have the kit lens, the 24 to 240. That's probably going to give you a great range in your photography for shooting those fireworks. You can zoom in if you want to get closer, especially if you are farther away. You can get a wider range and be able to zoom in with that 70 to 200 or 240 or even a 70 to 300. You can get that more compressed look in those photos, zoom in on fireworks if you want to. But if you're going to be closer to the action, closer up to the fireworks show, you may opt to go with the 15 to 35 like I'm using here, or go with the 24 to 70. If you're a little bit closer, those wider lenses are going to give you a good shot. Don't worry if you have prime lenses or if you have kit lenses, you're going to get a great shot either way because you're using that mid range on your aperture. You don't need a fast or prime lens as they're called to be able to get fireworks. The mid range in your aperture is going to get you a great result. I'd probably recommend using a zoom lens. That way you just have a wider range when you're out shooting. With a prime lens, you're gonna have to make sure that your framing's set up, so you need to either be back far enough or have a wide enough prime lens that you get that scene in focus. So beforehand, when you were scouting out, when you set up your camera on your tripod, make sure that your lens is going to be able to capture that whole scene. You'll also want to check out the weather. If it's going to be raining, you might throw in a rain poncho. Just be aware of the weather. And if your gear isn't weather sealed, then you may want to throw in an umbrella or opt to shoot from somewhere that is protected so you don't get all your gear wet and have to dry it out or have things malfunction. All right, let's get into settings and how to set your camera settings for the best picture. It may just be that you set your camera on burst and you've got good shots and you walk away and you're done. Here's some other tips that you can check to make sure you get a great shot. The first step I have for you is to check your focus. If you have it on autofocus, take a few test shots of the fireworks. Make sure, review them, make sure that you're getting them in focus. Once you've got the fireworks in focus, switch your camera to manual focus, and then you can nail those shots. They're gonna be crisp and in focus. That way you can avoid the camera focus hunting and trying to figure out where those fireworks are, and you'll get some blurry shots of the focus hunting around, missing the shots. So make sure you take some test photos, check them out before you go on shooting, so you've got your focus dialed in and you can keep on going. You don't have to stick to getting crisp photos. You can take some artistic liberties and take a blurry fireworks photo. There are some creative shots out there of blurry photos. If your camera has a flash, you obviously don't need that because fireworks are flashing in the sky. You don't need to flash to capture the fireworks. It's creating the light for you. Also, your white balance, you can just leave that on auto, but you could also check that. If you want to change any of that to capture your style of photography, then you can go ahead and change that, but normally auto is fine. The ISO should be set very low. Like I mentioned in this video, 5 tips to improve your photography. ISO is basically like adding that fake light to your image. So in night photography, you want to turn that down as much as possible so you don't get any extra grain. So 100 to 200 ISO should be good. Make sure you are switched to manual mode so you can control your shutter speed and your aperture. Your aperture should be set about in the middle, mid-range of your setting. You don't need to be worried about getting a super shallow depth of field. You're more of trying to do a wider landscape type shot, so don't worry about doing a low aperture. You'll probably start around at f8 or work up to f11 or 16. Just stay around the mid-range in your aperture and that's going to give you the sharpest results. Now you'll want to turn off any stabilization in the camera because you've obviously got it mounted on a tripod, so you're not going to be bumping it. Don't bump the camera when you're taking night photography. Now, shutter speed. What is the best shutter speed for fireworks? 1/10 of a second works pretty well because it's fast enough to capture the light, freeze the motion of the fireworks. It's long enough to capture the whole display of the fireworks. When you're using your camera on a tripod, you can use a much slower shutter speed, such as 1 or 2 seconds for your starting point. If you want to get more of the fireworks display, then you can bump your shutter speed up to a longer exposure using 10 to 20 seconds. A good ballpark for shooting fireworks is around 5 seconds. If you are wanting to capture those firework trails, you're gonna bump that shutter speed up to probably around 10 seconds. Then you get a whole firework trail. Another option, if you don't want to mess around with the shutter speed, if your camera has the bulb option on it, basically what this does is as long as you are holding the shutter button, that shutter is going to be open, taking the photo. So you're basically picking out how long you want your shutter to be open. So your shutter speed could be any amount of time. Hit that button when that firework just starts, and then as soon as it is full and you're done taking the photo, just let off and you should have a pretty decent photo with that using that bulb function. Did I explain bulb function good enough? Well, basically you're pressing and holding to open that shutter. As long as you're holding that button down, that shutter is going to be open. Once you release, then that shutter's gonna be closed, take the picture, and you should be good to go. As always, be sure to review your photos and make any adjustments or changes if you want to. When you press it to take a photo, it's gonna be holding that shutter open. Then when you release, you hear that click there, it's actually finished the photo. That is basically your shutter speed. And it should indicate on your camera, like that last one I just did was 2 seconds. Basically, this is just like setting your own shutter speed if you want. Like, it could be any time. That is basically the bulb function for you. If you want to take firework photos, that bulb function may just be the thing for you. If you don't want to use that function, just set your shutter speed and go from there. But with that function, if you hold your shutter open too long, you may get an overexposed photo. So you're just gonna have to go back through quickly review your photos if you're using that bulb function to make sure you're getting the shot. And it kind of takes a little practice to get used to. All right, you're ready to go. You've got a tripod, got your camera, set it all up. If you can, be sure to use a remote shutter or a cable shutter just to minimize any movements on the camera as much as you can. And you should be ready to go take photos. Shooting fireworks, it's pretty easy to get an overexposed photo because you've got the flash of the fireworks and you may have your shutter open a little bit too long by the time that firework is done. Always go through, check your preview, make sure your images are turning out, adjust accordingly, and keep shooting. If your photos are turning out too bright, you may want to turn your aperture down, or if you're too dark, then open up your aperture. And also with the shutter speed, if your photo is too bright, you may need to speed up the shutter. And if it's too dark, slow it down a little bit. So just make these little adjustments. As with any manual photography, you're just gonna have to adjust accordingly as you're shooting. Check your photos throughout the process. Be sure to always go through and review photos as you're taking them on these types of shoots, because you'll never want to get back home with an SD card that is full of overexposed or underexposed, blurry shots and all that stuff. So be sure to review your photos as you're taking them to make sure you don't miss a shot. Now when you're out shooting fireworks, the first couple photos you take are probably going to be the best ones of the fireworks, because halfway through the show, not even halfway, but you're going to get smoke from those fireworks going off, and the rest of your photos are going to get either more hazy, more smoky in them. So those first couple photos are probably going to be the cleanest photos you'll get. Now when you're shooting fireworks, don't worry about capturing every single firework. Just capture a couple, make sure you're reviewing your photos, and have a fun time. Enjoy the show. Another thing is focal lengths. You can do different focal lengths so you get a little bit different variety in your shots if you want to change it up a little bit. Just be creative. So let's quickly run through everything. You've got a tripod, your camera, you're shooting in manual mode or you're in the bulb mode. You've got your shutter speed set, your aperture, your ISO is down low. You've got your focus dialed in because you went out and scoped out the area beforehand, right? Don't forget to bring a chair so you have a comfortable place to sit and enjoy the show. Remember to have fun. You are taking beautiful photographs. You are creating art. Also, one more thing, don't forget to bring an extra battery in case you run out of juice. You can slip in a new battery, get back to shooting. Same with the SD card, be sure to bring an extra SD card so you can slip it back in and get back to shooting. So I hope this video was helpful for you all in shooting firework photography, getting you all ready to go out and shoot the fireworks. Hope you have fun, make some cool photos. If you have any questions about firework photography or photography in general, or about videography, I'll try to answer them as best I can. Be sure to subscribe, follow along if you aren't already, and I'll see you guys over in this video. Be sure to check this one out, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.